Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into some really fascinating ideas about vitamin D. We're going to explore why the sun might just be the most powerful tool you have for your health, right down to the cellular level. Okay, let's get into it. But first, I want you to just take a second and think about this question. From your brain to your bones, does every single one of your trillions of cells have that key ingredient it needs to do its job? It's a huge question, right? And the answer, well, it might just be hiding in plain sight. So here's what we've got on tap. We'll kick things off with why vitamin D is so ridiculously important. Then we'll get into the actual numbers you should be aiming for. After that, we'll look at why the sun is really the star of the show here. And finally, we'll talk about how to make a personal sun plan and wrap it all up with the key takeaways. All right, first things first, let's build the foundation here. Why are we even talking about this? What makes vitamin D so essential to our basic biology? Okay, so at its most basic level, our source material explains that vitamin D is a huge player in how our body handles calcium. It gets stored in the liver, and the kidneys put it to work. But honestly, that's just scratching the surface. And here is where it gets absolutely mind-boggling. This is the whole ballgame. We're talking about every single cell. Think of it this way. Every cell is built with a tiny little keyhole, a receptor, and vitamin D is the key. Without that key, countless things inside that cell just can't work the way they're supposed to. So if every cell needs this key, just how much do we actually need floating around in our system? Let's get specific now and look at the target numbers that I recommended in our source text. And there it is. The sweet spot, the ideal range you're shooting for, is between 70 and 100 nanograms per milliliter. This is the number you'd see on a blood test, and it's presented as the absolute optimal zone for your health. Now, this is so important to see side by side. You see, a level of 32 might get called low normal on a lot of standard lab reports. But the perspective here is totally different. The argument is that aiming for more than double that number is where you really start to unlock the benefits. So, how do you get to that optimal level? Well, the text suggests a daily intake of about 5,000 to 7,000 international units, or IUs for short. That's the kind of daily dose that helps you stay in that sweet spot. But, and this is a big but, where should those IUs come from? And that question brings us right to the absolute core argument of our source material. Because when it comes to getting that daily dose, it turns out not all sources are created equal, not by a long shot. The argument is that our bodies are designed, they are hardwired to process and store vitamin D from one source above all others, the sun. This little table really breaks it down nicely. According to the source, when your skin makes vitamin D from sunlight, your liver can actually store it, kind of like saving it for a rainy day. It creates a reserve for your body. But vitamin D from supplements? The argument is that it's not stored for very long at all, which means you don't build up that same valuable backup supply. Okay, so if the sun is the answer, when is the best time to be outside? The source gives us a really clear window of opportunity, between 10 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. That's when the sun's UVB rays, which are the exact type you need to make vitamin D, are at their strongest. So we know when to get sun, but for how long? Well, this is where it gets personal, because it is definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. Your own personal plan depends on some very specific things about you. So let's dig into that. First up is age, and this is a huge one. Just look at this chart. Our skin's ability to produce vitamin D from the sun drops off a cliff as we get older. We're talking by more than 50% from age 20 to age 80. What that means is pretty simple. An older person has to spend more time in the sun to get the same exact benefit as a younger person. The next big factor is your skin complexion. You see, melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color, basically acts like a natural sunblock. So as the source explains, someone with a very light skin tone might only need about 15 minutes of sun to get what they need. But someone with a darker complexion, they might need up to an hour of exposure to get that same dose. All right, we have covered a ton of ground here. So let's pull all of this together into a final summary, focusing on the most important actions and, this is critical, some really important warnings you need to hear. And let's start with the biggest one. This is a direct, serious warning from the source material. I cannot stress this enough. Supplementing blindly can be dangerous. Always talk with your healthcare provider and get your levels tested before you even think about taking a supplement. So here it is, your final action plan. First, know your goal, that 70 to 100 range. Second, prioritize getting out in the sun during that peak 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. window. Third, you've got to tailor your sun time based on your age and your skin tone. Fourth, and you heard me on this, talk to a professional before you ever take a pill. And finally, if you really like to get nerdy with the data, the source even suggests an app called D-Minder that can help you track your sun-based vitamin D production. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. It's about giving your body one of the most fundamental tools it needs to really thrive. It's about empowering you to be the conductor of your own well-being